Good morning, everyone. ECON Club TIT is delighted to have Dr. Ravi Kiran Ma'am as the speaker for today's webinar on the art of writing a research paper. She is a professor and head in charge at Thapar School of Humanities and Social Sciences with specialization in industrial management, behavioral and industrial economics, data analytics and IPR, and human development. Ma'am has published more than 130 papers in different publications, with 11 papers in international conferences to 70 papers in Indian conferences. She has also published 32 papers in SSCI impact factor journals. She has guided numerous PhD as well as MTech thesis applicants. She has also co authored the book A Strategic Framework for Corporate Social Responsibility Practices, a Study of India. She is also leading numerous projects funded by UGC and AICTE. Being no stranger to the world of research, it is wonderful to have you here, ma'am. Econ Club, with great fervor, extends its gratitude towards you for bestowing us with your presence. Over to you, ma'am.
And discussions. So these all seem to be very important part of the research that we generally undertake. The title of the research paper is very important. The title has to be concise and it has to be informative phrase, because this is the first thing that the potential reader is going to see. So that's why the title of the research has to be different, and it has to catch the eye of the reader. The title has to reflect what is contained in the paper. That's again very, very important. The second important part of it is we start off with a literature review. In the literature review, we generally cover that what are the key sources that have helped me in taking that research topic that I have chosen. And in the key sources, I will also be moving over to what are the major debates on the topic. So like we say that liberalization is going to help in the development of the economy. So we have to cover both the aspects, that how the researchers feel that liberalization assists in economic development. But at the same time, there may be the view of the researchers which may feel that liberalization rather hinders development. So the both aspects of the debate will have to be taken with a solid background of the research paper, that how they have either favored liberalization in terms of economic development or they have disfavored it. Then we also go in for origins and definitions of the topic. Like if I say that I'm going to work upon financial inclusion, so I must give a broad view of what is financial inclusion and how do I include this, or which research definition I have taken for financial inclusion. The key theories and concepts will also be the next component following the definition of it. Key theories, again, I will be covering up the theories that are taking the financial inclusion and how some of the theories may be taking up the adoption of financial inclusion. Some of the theories may be taking out that how the financial inclusion is assisting in economic development. Some of the theories may be linking financial inclusion with the other aspects or economic aspects that need to be taken, or relating it with the monetary or the fiscal policy. So this is very, very important component of the research, where we try to align this with the theories that are there. And I'll also specify that which theory I'm going to take up in my research paper. Then we move over to, is the knowledge structured or is it unorganized? That means the papers that have earlier been available on the topic, that are they in a particular structured mode or they are unorganized. If they are unorganized, then the review, I will first of all make the review more structured and then go on to the next stage of addressing the major problems that my research paper is going to undertake. So like the research problem, if I say financial inclusion, maybe I can say that I'm going to not work upon the financial inclusion as such, but I'm to work upon the problem of the gender digital divide in the financial inclusion. So that means the gender digital divide in the financial inclusion is what my research paper is going to underline and is going to focus upon. So this is the general structure when we are writing a review. Review forms a major component of the research because in the review only you will be able to understand that the review has it been done in the right direction, what are the gaps that are there in the earlier studies, and how your research paper is trying to address those gaps that are there. There are two types of data that can be available to work upon. One is that we can work upon the primary data, or we can also work upon the secondary data. Primary data is the data which can be collected through the researcher, and in social sciences and management, mostly we try to collect the primary data through a questionnaire. So questionnaire or a survey is a general basis from which can assist us in collecting the data and which can later on form a part of the research analysis which will assist in my research paper. Second is that we can also work upon the data that is already available, and there are certain databases which will be providing the data. Like if I am to get a data, I can work upon the WTO, go to the WTO site, get some data of the countries that are part of WTO, and the data for the regional trading agreements or any other data will be available. So these all sources where we have a database, or it could be unpaid or it could be a paid one, could be another source of the data that we can have the access to. Like COVID 2019, there are certain databases which are available in United States of America, and they publish it free of cost also. So we can get that data and then we can work or analyze upon that data. So that's another part where the data is already available and we either pay to get that data and then work upon that data. So this data forms a primary part of your research agenda, where we will specify that what is the source of collection of data and then move further to the analysis part. Then research could be of two types. One is that we work upon a qualitative research. Second is we work upon a quantitative research. When we are working upon a qualitative research, we can use the method of interviewing, and in-depth interviewing can assist, and many times people will also record this interview session so that they can be used in the research. It could also be in terms of the recording of the historical narratives. It could be an informal observation, etc. So observation could be one way of getting the collective data. Interviews could be another way of collecting the data. But mostly, many researchers may use a quantitative method of research. The quantitative method of research specifies that we have collected a data which is a numerical data, and we will use a statistical or a mathematical analysis to draw conclusions or to test the hypothesis that we have framed for the research. So that's another component of it, where we focus upon the data source along with the data type, that whether it's a qualitative or the quantitative data that we are going to work upon. Many times if we are collecting the data through the survey, we need to check out for the reliability. That means, is my questionnaire consistent in the results? That means next time if I am getting data from the same questionnaire, do I get consistent results? So if they are not consistent and if they are not reproducible over time, that means the paper doesn't give a good reliability index and it may not fetch the right results, or the results that can be drawn from that are going to be wrong. Hypotheses form a very important component of research. We have two types of hypotheses, that is either the null hypothesis or we have the alternate hypothesis. Null hypothesis may say, like in the example that I have taken, we can say that there's no relation between financial inclusion and economic development. So that will be a null hypothesis. But if I have to put it in the alternative hypothesis form, then I will say there is a relation between financial inclusion and economic development. So that is the way we can move out with the hypothesis. And sometimes one hypothesis may have a segment of sub-hypothesis that may help to attain the relationship between financial inclusion as well as the economic development. Hypothesis generally is a statement, and our end result through the analysis would be either we accept the hypothesis or we reject the hypothesis. That can be tested through various tests that we have. You may have taken up statistics and some Z tests or T tests. If you have done, then they are the preliminary tests that can be used. Whenever we read any paper, initially we come out after the title, we have the abstract of the paper. The abstract, in fact, is a brief summary of the entire paper. The beauty about the abstract is that abstract has to contain all that is there in the paper, and it should be written in the end, but it has to be placed in the beginning of the paper. So whatever results that we draw, whatever novelty is there in the paper, whatever implications are there for the paper, all may be briefly highlighted in the abstract, which generally for most of the research paper varies from 250 to 500 words. Could be the major limit for the abstract. Abstract is followed by the introduction part. In the introduction part, we try to introduce the problem, we try to identify the problem, we try to say that why we are working upon that problem, what is there that has made me work upon that problem, what is there which has not been undertaken by the earlier researchers. So that's briefly when we try to identify a problem. Then the initial introduction would be followed by a theoretical framework. Theoretical framework, as I've already told you briefly, is that the theory that I'm going to adopt in my research analysis. So like if we say that the theory I'm going to work upon is the theory that links the financial inclusion with economic development. So I'll have to give the base of all the theories that will be relating inclusion with financial development, and later on I will be developing my conceptual framework for the research paper. So this, when we have identified the problem, when we have just said that this is the theory I'm going to work upon, the final thing would be that is I will state the problem, and I would be listing down the research questions, which in other words could also be the objectives that I want to fulfill by undertaking research on that particular topic. So that's another idea for briefly the sub-segmentation that is there for the initialization your research paper, starting with introduction, identification of the problem, the theoretical framework, and what problem you are going to undertake and deal with in the research paper. Then the design and methodology are very, very important components of the research, because they focus upon how the objectives that you have defined briefly, these research questions or objectives, how you are going to achieve them, which methods are you going to employ to achieve the research. Then we will also be in the methodology defining that what is the approach that we have used for the topic, and what is the theoretical or subjective scope of the research paper that is there. So briefly here we will define the scope, but the implications that are emerging from the analysis would be put in the conclusion section that may have a subcomponent of implications. Conclusion and discussion, again, they are very important. We'll start off with the suggesting that what are the major findings of the research paper, how does these research findings relate with those of others, and in addition to that, supposing someone has already done research and you are corroborating the research findings of others, but along with that you are also giving something new. Like I told you in the gender digital divide and financial inclusion, someone may have worked upon the financial inclusion as such, but I'm going to cover the gender digital divide in the financial inclusion, so that those findings will be my new findings, which will in a way also relate it with the novelty aspect that I have covered in my research paper. Research paper should not be a duplication of the papers that are already available on the net. So you have to suggest what is new, what is different, and how these will be helping either the marketers or the persons who are pursuing research in those area, or related with some other implication that will be useful for the economy as such. The limitations and implications, again, nowadays form a very important segment of research. Now, my research must deeply highlight it, that what are the limitations of my research. The limitations may be related with the limitation that may arise from the methodology. So that could be one aspect of limitation. The limitations can also arise from the choice of the sample that I have taken. Supposing I've worked in North India, so I have not worked in case of the entire India. So can we say that North India can be taken to represent the Indian economy as such? Or if the North Indian perspective is different from the South Indian perspective, I will say that this becomes a limitation of my research. Then similarly, the limitation could also be related with what would have been covered but which has not been covered in my research. The limitations could have arisen because of the limited time that I had, or limited resources that I had to pursue the research. Like many times we get a project, like currently I'm working on a DSC project, which is about the business incubators and how they assist in the developing the entrepreneurial skills that are there in this. And basically we are going to various technology business incubators, and we are trying to get data that how these business incubators are assisting in developing the entrepreneurial skills. And we are also working on how entrepreneurial skills will help in the better performance of the technology business incubators. So now I have got a project for 3 years, so I cannot pursue all the business incubators. So I will have to specify that which business incubators I'm taking and why those could be taken to be representing the entire Indian population as such. So that is what should be there in the research, but at the same time, the scope of the research could also become a limitation of the research. We also specify the implications of the research, like the same project I'm going to work upon. If I find that the entrepreneurial skills will help in enhancing the performance of the TPIs. So that means we will say TPIs need to provide not only the facilities and services to the tenant firm, they also need to provide the in the entrepreneurial skill development also. So this entrepreneurial skill development, earlier focus was only on the leadership skills that can be enhanced. But now what I'm finding is that in my research, what is coming is that the team skills that will be needed to be enhanced, not only focusing upon the leadership skills. So this way I'm drifting away from the earlier findings, and we are saying that there has to be focus upon the team skills. So this means that the TBIs need to work upon providing the team skills. One reason for this is that the startup campaign started by the India, where people are working in the teams and they are coming out with new ideas. So rather than individually opening up your industries, most of the students or most of the younger generation people, they are coming out with certain ideas where it is a team of 2 or 3, and based upon that they can just excel in the business. Like Flipkart, it may not be an idea of one, it's an idea of more than one person, which has led to the development of the business as such. So my research paper has also to specify what are the future direction that I want to lay down for other researchers to work upon. Like in this, I gave you the idea. I have come out with some findings where we say entrepreneurial skills are needed. We have also found out that which type of skills can be provided. But now the next direction of the research could be how the business incubators come out with the training programs and provide those skills which have been listed to be having a positive relationship with the business incubator performance as such. So this, my conclusion could be laying down the foundations for the future researchers, where I can show that this is a direction where they can work upon or where they can move. A brief idea of a research through the example. There's a teacher who gives the student that Ria, you have to write a research paper on entrepreneurial motivation. Ria is excited that from the class she has been chosen to write a research paper. She responds, sure ma'am, I'm going to work upon it. Now, what happens is that Ria goes home and like all of us, the first thing that we do is open up a laptop, just search upon all the research papers that are there on the entrepreneurial motivation. So finally, she narrows down upon some research papers. Some of these are given below. She looks at a research paper, entrepreneurial motivation, a systematic review. She said, this is the right paper, I've chosen this, I'm going to get my inputs from this paper. Then she finds another paper, creative entrepreneurs perception of entrepreneurial motivation. So entrepreneurial motivation, she tries to get the keywords. Through the keywords she searches and tries to get the research papers on that. So one is a review based paper, another is a paper which has analytically found a relation between the entrepreneurial motivation and looks into the perception of that. Then the third paper that she chooses is the motivation and success factors of entrepreneurs. So she says that I'm going to work upon the success factors, how motivation is going to assist in the success of entrepreneurial ventures. Then finally she chooses the title of the paper. My title of the paper is going to be creating a framework for relating entrepreneurial motivation with success. Ria Smith, she writes the title and she writes her name and she tries to come out with a paper. Now, after a little effort, she says, oh, wow, now my paper is ready. So I'm ready to show it to my teacher. She goes next day to the class and she just shows the teacher, I've come out with a research paper and the title of my research is creating a framework for relating entrepreneurial motivation with success. Teacher says, oh good, but let me just check out the plagiarism for the research paper. And when the plagiarism is checked out, she says, oh, it's 73% similarity index. So what Ria has done is cut, copy, paste. And from that, the research paper is not original. It is just whatever has been there in the earlier papers, and she has just copied. Then the teacher tells Ria that this is a severe offense. So we cannot copy someone's work and quote it as our own work. So that is why we have a lot of softwares now available. If you send your paper for review in any journal, the first thing that they do is they check out for the similarity index. And if the similarity index is more than 15%, then generally the paper will be sent back. So that means the maximum allowed is 15%. That also has to be scattered and not the entire proportion of analysis that you copy up for this. So this is something that needs to be avoided. Now, the errors that need to be omitted or avoided when we are writing a research paper is that many times the papers, they come back because you have not written the background in the right way, or the paper may be missing the theoretical framework. So if you are not using that which theory you have worked upon, then the paper is not going to be taken up for the review. Or you have not cited some of the recent research papers that have been available on that topic. Even if we fail to substantiate some of the points, then also the research paper may be returned. The research paper could be lacking in terms of not being highlighting the major findings, or you have not related them with the other researchers' work. That means the discussion component has not been written in the right way, and you have not said that how your paper is different from others and what is it that it is trying to relate it with the other people's research. Or it could also be lacking in terms of the practical implication. The implications could be the implications that are there for the marketers, implications that are there for the researchers, implications that are there which are having a practical component of it. In India, many of the papers may be in India and many of the developing countries where we do not give a complete focus upon the language, the paper may be returned because of the language errors as well. So in certain cases, so we have to see that we try to edit it, and your research paper should be examined at least 5 to 7 times, and then finally it should be sent for the publication. Because many times when we reread the paper, we will come out with certain errors that could have been omitted. So the reading and rereading of the paper, or using a Grammarly which can be there to correct the language errors, or getting it edited through a person who is proficient in the language, could be another way we can avoid the language errors. At least some of these can be avoided by the researcher, and if most of them are avoided by the researcher, then they can go about with a certainty that their paper will be accepted for the review, and finally after the review it may also be selected for publication. Going with the research papers, we also come to various types of research papers that are there. So I'll just briefly highlight it. What are the various types of research papers? So there could be the research papers that are purely analytical, research papers which may be argumentative. The definition research papers are there. There are certain papers which are compare and contrast papers. Then we may have a cause and effect paper. We may have certain reports which are also published, and like the BRICS report, which earlier said that India and China are going to be the emerging economies of the world. China first and India later on. So interpretive paper, which go in for interpretation of some component. So these are the various types of research papers. Whenever we are writing a paper, we must choose that what type of research paper I'm going to work upon. So analytical research paper, as the name suggests, will be basically analyzing the different viewpoints, and which are represented from a factual rather than the opinionated standpoint. So they are more related with the facts, but they are covering the different viewpoints expressed by different researchers. So this is not a opinion-based paper, but it's rather more of a fact-based paper that we are going to work upon. So this focuses majorly on the findings, the methodology, the conclusions of other researchers, and will conclude such a paper with a summation of the findings and also suggesting a framework for further study on that research problem. Argumentative, uh, Argumentative research papers are those papers, as the name suggests, they must contain the argumentations for and against, so they will cover both the sides of the controversial issues. A good argumentative paper must have the in-text citations where logically we are presenting the facts from the both perspective for and against. That means we will work upon the pros as well as cons. The confusing element that's there in the argumentative paper is that the author is expected to favor one side more than the other on an issue. But the research and analysis must be unemotive and factual and include. So you are covering both the argumentations, but you are favoring one side of that. Like we say, financial inclusion is whether it's assisting in the economic development for and against, but I'm saying that financial inclusion assists economic development. So presenting both from the neutral perspective, but then going on to move or favoring in one direction. That's the beauty of the argumentative research paper. The importance of argumentative research papers is very evident. So this is just another example of the argumentative research paper. The importance of academic environment and academic culture on institutional ranking, where we can say academic environment and culture both assist in getting a higher rank for the institution, but we also have to give viewpoint against it as well. Definition paper, as the name suggests, they describe a topic from a factual standpoint that is usually devoid of emotion or opinion of the author. So you are not expressing your opinion, but you are taking a definition which has been prescribed by other, and based upon that you will try to move ahead with the paper. So the definition research paper will include the facts from variety of sources that have been undertaken. This information will be left unanalyzed because your opinion will not count here, because you are expressing whatever has been taken as a definition from others' perspective or other factual findings that you have done. So here your opinion should not be taken, but we are working upon the definition research papers. Compare and contrast papers, they again compare two different authors or stories from a particular genre. Generally, if we take the papers which are for the literature studies would generally be covering the compare. Two authors are taken, two literary writers are taken, and we try to compare their literary styles. So this could be a compare and contrast paper that would be there. So more often it is from the philosophy, perspective. In case of literature also, you'll try to cover up the compare and contrast papers. So the two different theoretical viewpoints that are there will be related with the two philosophical thoughts, and you will work upon those two philosophical thoughts, express them, and then compare and contrast them. And then finally, you will provide a support for that in your research work or through a thesis that may be there. Cause and effect papers are mostly true for the research papers which are analytical. Like if I say that demand is a function of price, so that means I'm taking that demand is a function of price, or demand is indirectly related with the price. So quantity demanded would increase if price decreases. So here price becomes the cause and demand becomes the effect. So these type of papers would be the cause and effect, where we try to find out that what are the causes that lead to a change in the demand or a increase or decrease in the demand. So these type of papers are very, very common, and most wherever you are using your regression analysis, these are the cause and effect papers that are there. Then we also have the reports which are a little longer than the research papers. Some of the things may be coming out in the form of a report. Reports are often more favored in terms of the case study situation, where we are writing a case study analysis. Reports usually include an executive summary that takes the place of an abstract in this type of a research paper, as well as we also have a supporting evidence in the form of that the appendix that may be there in the report, the graphs that are there in the report, the tables that are there in the report. Like you go in for an internship and you come out and write a report, then it's not exactly a form of a research paper, but these are in the form of the reports, which have to be based just like the research papers, and they will cover all the things that may be covered in the research paper. Then we have the interpretive papers. Then interpretive papers, they are often required by tutors that are working in the field of literature, humanities, or social sciences. Here, in those theoretical courses, we use the theoretical knowledge that is gained in a course of study to a particular case study example, such that we take an example of a piece of art or a poem in the literary fields, or we, in a management, we take example of a business situation in a management course, or a psychological case profile in either sociology or psychology field. So the key element of these type of papers is the evidence that the student has written the paper based upon a particular theoretical framework, and he has also got the supporting data to back that thesis statement as well as the finding. So based upon the interpretation that are there, we try to relate it with a particular theory that is evident, and then we try to write this type of a research paper, which is interpretive research paper. This is just an example of a journal option. This many times when you are putting your research paper in a particular journal, they will ask you what is the choice of the paper, whether this is a research article, whether you are writing a book review, or whether it's an editorial paper, or it's a special issue article. So many times if you are only writing a research article, you will click upon this option to choose. Then we have the types of research articles, where in some journal they will say that whether it's original research, whether it's a short report or a letter that you are going to work upon, whether it's a perspective, opinion, or it's a commentary, or it's a review article, or sometimes they will also give you the option that whether it's a case study or not. So often we will have to choose one and select it. So if you are writing a research paper, then you will click upon the option of original research. Original research article will be the research which may be having the same component that I've already discussed, the introduction followed by a theoretical framework, then methods, then results or findings, and finally followed by the discussion section. So these are, if we go by the short letters, so short letters, these papers, they communicate a brief report of the data from the original research that editors believe will be interesting to the researchers. So that is, sometimes they come out with a short report, and this will be not very long papers. Original research papers could be vary from 15 to 30 pages. But these short letters or short reports or letters, they are just brief communication and sometimes could not be more than 500 to 1000 words. Then the review paper is now very, very common these days. A review paper has to contain many research articles. If you are working upon a systematic review, then it would be covering 10,000 to 12,000 words. So, and it will there will be more than 100 papers that may be cited in one research paper. Here we will come to do a systematic review of the research that is there. Like in the entrepreneurial research paper on motivation. So this paper could be a review paper where you come out with all the papers that have worked for entrepreneurial motivations, and then we will further try to in the end specify that what is that is emerging from the review. That would be my contribution to the research paper. The perspective, opinion, or commentary, these are the scholarly reviews of a fundamental concepts that are there in prevalent ideas. They usually are the essays that would be presenting a personal point of view, and it's more of a critic that is related with a particular field. A perspective piece can be a review of only a single concept or a few related concepts. So here we mostly work upon the secondary literature that is already available, and these are usually short articles not covering more than 2000 words. So the perspectives or the commentary also will be covering just a brief component and will not be more than 2000 words. Case studies are very frequent and very famous in case of management. These are the case study based papers. They are interesting and they are also related with the analyzing them in the class as well. These case studies could be a fabricated case study, or it could be a real case-based analysis. So if I'm working from Flipkart or e-business, I take the example of Flipkart and I get the real data and work upon that, or Amazon, that would be a real case-based analysis where I'm actually using the data and working upon it. But it could also be a fabricated case study where you try to fabricate it and try to make a concept relevant so that it can be taken up in the class. So case studies generally assist in providing the strategies which could be important for the decision making. In medicine also, the case study or case-based research are very, very common because they would be reporting the occurrence of the previously unknown or emerging pathologies. So that is why this type of research studies or case studies are very common in case of medicine medicine as well, field as well. So methodology papers focus upon any methodology that you are going to use. If you say that you are going to use PLSM or regression analysis or logistic regression, so these would be the methodology papers which are working upon a particular methodology. Like in your engineering stream, it could be a deep learning methodology that you are going to use for prediction, or going to do it for analysis purpose. So that would be the methodology paper, or using a Python for analyzing a particular topic. So this was all I wanted to share with you related with the research papers and how we can basically use various types of researches to find out how or what is the element that will be needed for a research. Actually, research, I say that two things are very, very important in a research. One is your passion to do a research. And the second is, if you have a passion, you will try to find out that how you can pursue those research with a particular idea, and you can relate it with the topic that you are really interested in. So one is the passion, second is the passion for a topic that you want to work upon. Like in our class, we had students who are in the final year and or in the third year. They say, we want to work upon a research paper. Ma'am, can you help us? But later on, when we ask them to do come and study the review and come after studying the review paper, they say it has gone over our head, and maybe you don't get that much time. So one is that time will be very, very important for doing a research. And as you said, I've published more than 140 papers, and more than 50 of them are in the SSCI listed journals or ABDC category. Now in that, it has become a passion. Now I just play with the software where just like you do with a game. So it becomes a sort of gaming for me, where we can work and just take it as a game or a passion. That passion has to be there as a researcher. So I'm open to questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you, ma'am. That was a very delightful, insightful session. So a few questions that were put up by
Yeah,
the audience.
definitely.
Yeah. So one of the question is basically during this online and after post-COVID, basically before pre-COVID, people have this mindset that research involves to getting interaction with people to get the stats and information right or accurate enough. So how are we going to do that in an online environment? And how long does it take to research on a topic? Like how much time as a college student we have to devote on it if we want to write research paper while in college?
Again, I would say the first research paper I wrote was Buddhistic Way of Life and uh, environmental growth. So it was a paper which was published in a journal, initially in a book and later on in a journal as well. So, but for that, I read 3 books on Buddhism to get a complete knowledge about Buddhism, and because I need to find out how I can relate Buddhism with the environmental concerns, and that too through economics, which is my base. So I read a book of Fritz of Capra that is related with the environment and how the growth is doing the environmental destructive harm that is there. So the third book that I read was again a Fritz of Capra, which was covering the environmental aspects as well. So again, the research paper, it is, as I said, you have to relate. If you are simply writing a review paper, so the best way you can start is, you can start off as a review paper, And for that, we have the access in the library where we have the journals which are there. I would say that you should take only the SSCI or SCI listed journal, because those are the papers which will be covering the review. So best way now people started writing a review paper is, like I said, entrepreneurial motivation. You'll put it in the search option in the Google, then see that how many papers are available on the broad topic. Then you try to narrow down on the keywords, only entrepreneurial motivation, only entrepreneurial success, and then you zero down on a few research papers. So sometimes we start off with 10,000 and finally zero it down to the 16 papers that are left to be taken, and finally we review them and come out with some sort of review analysis. So that's the best option that is available. But otherwise, as you said, that in the online mode the data availability could be a restriction. So here we could use a survey mode, and we have the Google Forms. All of you are using the Google Forms to find out that how the people are working upon various research topics. So the same way you can collect the data, and through the data I will sometime tell you the simple methods that can be used for analysis. So even your Excel, we in your PhD classes as well in your MTech students, I try to tell them that how simple Excel can be used for finding out the rate of growth or simply regression. So I'll share some links where you can just come to know that how we can find out a growth rate or a regression analysis, a cause and effect paper. So collecting some data and then writing a cause and effect paper on that. So you can use also the social media for putting your question here, but do be aware that it should not be copied by someone. So you have to be a little careful in that context. Yes.
And ma'am, the other question that was put up was, like, is there any software that on our hand we can check our research paper for plagiarism beforehand, before like we submit it to somewhere else, like other than the similarity index, some software that is available that we can use, check for plagiarism?
The free softwares that are generally available, don't use them, because they will take your papers in their databases and you will not be able to next time you check for plagiarism, it's going to be much enhanced because they have already put it in their database. So don't use the free software that are available on the net. I think I just check out, there is something available for the students which is also given preference by the UGC. So that access is available, but right now I am not aware of the software. But if you are writing a research paper, including a teacher who is attached with you for a project, the teacher can do a plagiarism check, because we have access to turn it in, and one teacher can check 25 papers. So that way, if you work in a group and not go briefly initially for checking it, just do your editing first at your level, and finally you can go in for a research paper. Because in Turnitin or any plagiarism, more than 8 words that you copy, it's going to come in the plagiarism. So those 8 words may not be in the same line, they could be in 3-4 lines as well.
Okay. So, ma'am, even I was, Sanya and I had started a bit of rough work for the research so that we have the raw material prepared. And we both have a lot of interests and a lot of topics and directions where we can go in. And I'm sure my friends are facing the same. So how do we narrow down or drill down to one topic and define an aim? Key, this is the problem we are seeing, and this is the recommendation we are making. So how do we go about it?
That's why I said a systematic review. Start out with a broad topic. Okay. That this is the broad topic that you're going to work upon. Then choose a sub-components or sub-keywords on that. Your
Right.
area should be clear.
Okay.
If the
Okay.
area is diversified, then you will find it too difficult. I want to work on this area, I want to work upon that area, then it will, but area should be defined, and then you, from a particular long number of keywords, you zero down to a few keywords, and then you move in that direction. That's the best way. First thing is initially systematic review. From the systematic review, you will be able to come out to what area you want to work, what further subtopic you want to work upon.
Right. Guys, if anyone else has any questions, this is the best time. Shoot. Okay. Looks like no one is having doubts right now. So, ma'am, thank you so much for having, joining us. I'll be very straightforward with this. I'm not a big fan of online sessions and online classes, but this is the first one I've attended very thoroughly, made all my notes, So, thank you so much for keeping it so interesting. And we are really looking forward to having, multiple sessions with you once we gradually start with the research work and we have something to present to you, so we can have another doubt session.
I'll just share one research paper with you where you can just share it with others, because these days writing a review or a literature survey is very difficult part of research. So
Absolutely, ma'am.
mostly what I find is that the students who have taken entrepreneurship and innovation course, they come out with a report. What they do is do a brief survey and come out with the findings that are available for the Google format only. And then they just put them in the research report, which is not going to give you any novelty for that, because this is something which is available and accessible to everyone. So in your research, you have to be a little different from others, and that is where the differential will make your paper a little unique and novel. So that is very important.
Right, ma'am. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you so much, ma'am.
It was nice having interaction with you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Bye and take care.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the time.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Okay, Harsh, you can close.